Unless you've been living under a rock for the past year and not paying attention to GTA Online, very understandably, you're probably aware of two things. One, the AC-130 is being added to GTA Online, the Titan 250D, and two, it's going to be useless.
Because as it would turn out, when you give every single player unrestricted access to a gun that can functionally and or literally kill every aircraft and light armored vehicle in the game with a single shot, people don't want to spend $4.8 million on even the shiniest flying coffin. Today's video isn't about the Titan 250D. It's about the weapon that makes it so difficult to make a video on a plane like that, or any vehicle in the game that isn't insanely armored, so basically 80 to 90% of the vehicles in this game. And though I'm sure a lot of you free mode pilots know the struggle all too well, even you might be surprised just how deep this rabbit hole goes into how this single addition just about killed the entire incentive of this game. For once and for all, and for hopefully the eyes of any wandering Rockstar devs, but mostly for you, the greatest victims of it, today is the long-awaited deep dive into the Railgun. Now, to understand why the Railgun is so potent and powerful in PvP, we need to understand its precursor, the explosive sniper. Now, I am not going to sit here and say that the explosive sniper is balanced, whereas the Railgun isn't. No, the explosive sniper on its own is significantly worse. Functionally, the biggest difference is simply that the explosive sniper has no range limitation. And because the projectile is so fast that it's essentially hit scan, it becomes a matter of point and click to deal explosive damage to any vehicle at any range. Giving a player the ability to instantly inflict explosive damage on a vehicle is insanely powerful, not just because of that damage itself, but because of what can happen afterward. This isn't Battlefield where you can take one small explosive, but you're still functionally fine, you can keep staying in the fight. For aircraft especially, when you take any significant damage in this game, enough gunfire and impact, or again, a single explosive, the aircraft basically goes into a disabled state right off the bat. It goes straight into black smoking, the engine starts cutting out, you lose performance, and that's if you don't get hit in the tail. Because as we're seeing with the Titan 250D, when you get hit in the tail, the player loses all control of the aircraft, and all it can do is spiral out of the air and slam into the ground, thus the functional kill. And this is 10 times worse for helicopters, as when a helicopter takes any damage, it doesn't go into disabled state. Within 2 minutes, the whole thing just dies. But at very least, the explosive sniper is limited. It of course has limited ammo, and of course takes away one of the most versatile weapons in any player's arsenal, the standard sniper rifle. And you will come across players who abuse it, but generally the players that would be the most dangerous with it, because they're good snipers, just like sniping in general, meaning they're not going to give up the best weapon they have. The explosive sniper is usually reserved for someone who doesn't really enjoy PvP but likes easy kills. Again, this does not mean it's a well-balanced weapon. It just means that thankfully, because of how players work in this game, you don't run into it much. It very badly needs a rebalance, and Ghillie Master kind of gave Rockstar the method, and I really hope they take them up on that.
You're no longer going to get shot across the map by one of these, and if you do, then you know it was a nice shot by a good player.
Now, what happens when you give every single player that capability? What happens when you give all of them the ability to infinitely buy ammo for an explosive sniper? What happens if you increase the damage so now it also one-shots most ground vehicles unless they have any missile resistance, basically making a hit-scan homing launcher? And also, they don't have to give anything up to use it. If you didn't understand it before, now I hope you're starting to see why the Railgun is so potent. And while it's true that it's limited to 500 meters, 500 meters is really far. For reference, that's about half the runway at LSIA, and also, side note, it's the exact range of all of the Titan 250D's weapons. So, fun fact, you will never be able to fight a player with the Titan 250D without them being able to railgun you in the tail, in case you thought maybe you could outrange players.
Did you fire a flare? Just like directly up. There he is. Yeah, wow. Yeah, render distance is not your friend in this thing. That's huge.
And the Titan 250D is also the exception in that range, as the AC-130 has a special long-range weapon flag. But this moves us into our next point. Is a weapon like this even necessary? Now, of course, aircraft are extremely destructive weapons, and we saw what happened when you let it go a little bit too far, i.e. the laser in the Hydra. Planes with an explosive cannon that you could fire from directly above your target and basically level a whole city block in one pass. And that ability to attack from directly up means that a player cannot defend themselves because they literally can't look up. So the RPG and the homing launcher were completely useless. Something like the explosive sniper or the railgun were kind of your only chance to maybe hit them when they were pulling out of that 90-degree attack. So the nerfs were probably a good thing, but of course they're gone now. and now we're left with aircraft that are only about half as potent as those two. Now, I have tested this myself and died a lot of times, and I can say with full confidence, you can absolutely deal with just about every aircraft in this game using an RPG, a homing launcher, and the flare gun, because every other plane is very well balanced for dealing with players on the ground. Render distance, for example, kind of acts as a natural balance for planes. They have to get close to you, meaning they have to get in range of you if they want to attack you. And if you free fire high-speed homing missiles, if you RPG at the right time, if you flare gun away if they're firing rockets at you, which works by the way, and if you actually run around and are evasive instead of just standing still as it comes after you like most players do, the standard sniper rifle also is very underrated in its ability to fight off aircraft. Most players expect a bullet weapon not to do very much damage, but when you follow up with this thing whenever the aircraft gets too far away for you to reliably fire missiles at, you can pack in a lot of rounds and potentially get a very lucky snipe. So if you do struggle against aircraft on ground without use of the railgun or E-round, you'll find that being aggressive back towards the planes and being evasive is a lot more of a fight than you think it is. You're not just going to get stomped over and over. It's not easy. They are at an advantage to you, of course. They spent millions of dollars and tens of maybe hundreds of hours mastering that vehicle. They have earned their advantage, but it's not unwinnable. It's what it should be, an asymmetrical boss fight. It is actually pretty fun.
It reminds me a lot of a Soulsborne boss, not because it's nearly as difficult, but because you can kind of get into a flow state of reading their attack patterns, following up when you see an opening and punishing all their mistakes. It is a satisfying challenge with a dance to it.
And so, as you've probably already seen, when you add a railgun into this equation, at an aircraft that has to get close to you, that has to follow linear patterns and weave around terrain even to aim at you, being able to, with half an inch of lead, basically or literally one-shot them, isn't even close to a fight. You can bully them all day. In fact, you're at such an advantage that you basically grief planes. You grief everything, which moves on to our next point. Now, let me be clear about something. There's no such thing as an anti-griefing or a griefing tool. There are things that are easy to use and there are things that are not easy to use. When you give players a way to easily and without applying themselves destroy each other and attack each other and impede on each other, generally players that want to grief are more oriented towards that. Griefing is really just intrusive thoughts. It's when you're bored, and you see it with GTA. If you play in free aim versus auto aim, for example, more times when you're around players in auto aim, they'll shoot at you for no reason, because it's easy and it does a lot of damage. We saw this and still see this with the Oppressor Mark II, because it's so easy to just fly around and shoot missiles at everybody. And of course, notoriously with the Laser and the Hydra. Before their nerf, all you had to do was just swing it around and hold A. Any player could do that. I mean, I'm talking about planes and helicopters. Look at streetcars, for example. Oh, they gave the Imani Tech upgrade that lets them not be locked onto to pretty much every streetcar and motorcycle. What a great idea. I'm so glad that I can drive cars around without being bothered anymore. So if there was any intention for this thing to be an anti-griefing tool, well, congratulations, you just added one of the best griefing tools that has ever been added to this game. Really, the only anti-griefing change that Rockstar could make is making it to where you don't have to sell your cargo in a mail van in a game where they have flying rocket motorcycles and A-10s. Now that is all game sandbox and balance. Let's talk about how this thing also loses Rockstar money. See, when the game is good, people buy shark cards more. Now that's obvious, more people are going to play it, but it goes a little deeper than that. The whole point of Grand Theft Auto Online, the entire gameplay loop, is you get into the game, you see something interesting, so you want to grind for it, do missions, do heists, get the money, and then you buy it and you play with it. And through other players seeing you use it, or maybe the videos that you make using it, they start their own little cycle on that. Every single player in their vehicle are basically a billboard to make money in this game. That is also the incentive for shark cards, because all that grinding and heisting and missioning is repetitive and boring, and so naturally someone will say, you know what, I really want to try this plane, so I'll throw a little 5% of my paycheck just to try it, or get the business that I can use to get more, etc., etc. Take that little cycle and apply it to hundreds of vehicles that this game has. And every single time someone has that little cycle, they have a chance to buy a shark card. And you can see why this game has been so profitable for so long. At Doomsday, for example, when there were so many new and good to use weaponized vehicles, there was a reason to own all of these vehicles and try all of these unique ways to dominate free mode, to easily do missions. And it was just as fun and good for the players. This is when I got into the game, because every new vehicle is a new adventure. It kept you invested, it kept you playing. And so when you devalue so many vehicles and make them functionally useless, you not only take away from a player's potential to stay with the game and try new things, you're taking away the times that they might spend money. Rockstar have made very bad balancing decisions that make large chunks of the sandbox and vehicles that have already been in the game basically useless. And as we're seeing now, with people not even wanting to buy the AC-130, the Railgun is kind of the final nail in the coffin. It's the biggest nail. It really screwed things up. It's even just less interest in PvP because it's just not as fun anymore. If all fights just come down to is eventually you railgun each other out of all the vehicles you have and it just becomes, well, driving around in Amani cars and chasing each other through garages, that is a shadow of how interesting and varied and fun this game used to encourage you to be. And if you were around back then, you know just how different it was, but if you weren't, I promise you, free mode used to be incredible. And you don't just have to take my word for it. This is when just about every PvP channel that is still around today exploded. PvP content was huge. Most of the names you know, Nitrix Warlord, Gilly Master, Project Telesexuality, I could go on forever. You had a whole beautiful cycle of a game being fun and people wanting to share that with each other, and the whole time, Rockstar was making a lot of money off of that. Versus now, it's kind of a shadow of its former self. Free mode is a shadow of its former self.
Nobody is winning from this thing. If you want a nerf, I would say the nerf is to just remove its explosive properties, but I think we should remove it. Here's why I wouldn't even say nerf it. When it comes to problems like, say, the Mark II, everybody has such a different idea of how to rework it that we end up just arguing so long about it that Rockstar kind of has to default for a solution that tries to please everybody, which usually just lies between not actually fixing the core problem of what they're reworking, or reworking it so badly that it's basically useless compared to what it originally was. I understand the concern that, well, you spent money on it, that's wasted money, and it would be great if they refunded you that $730,000, but let me ask you this. Of all the vehicles that you own and have gained over the past 10 years, like take the Laser, would you have spent $6.5 million to get the aircraft that it is now in the state of the game that it is now? So that money that might be wasted if they don't refund you is made up for in spades by the fact that all of the vehicles that this thing makes irrelevant now just became valuable again. Whereas now, Rockstar basically cheated you out of the money that you put into any aircraft that you thought would be competitively fun during its heyday. Another thing about it, that almost doesn't sound legal, given that you can buy these vehicles with, again, real-life money, and so much of it. I still think it's very valuable to propose changes for this game even before 6. I mean, well, this is the game that we're going to be left with, and they need feedback, and I don't want this game to be left in its worst state, because that's definitely where it is right now. It feels ridiculously unfair that I can go hop on Battlefield 4 and play the game at the best it ever was, whereas I might never get back those fantastic lobbies that I got back in 2018 to 2020, the stuff that got me hooked on this game and the reason that I want to convey all that passion to you through videos. But that passion is still there. Because the way it's always been, regardless of how good the meta is it's about what you make for yourself. Take the Railgun, take the Explosive Sniper, and if you have a situation you think you might need it, try getting through it without it. Try not using the Mark II. Try not using the Railgun. Because, well, thankfully this game doesn't have skill-based matchmaking, and if you got a little heart, you'll probably still outskill those brainless assholes that are going to attack you for no reason. Or you'll be the guy attacking everyone for no reason. No judgment here, let's just say a lot of people died to make this video happen, and I'm sorry if I killed you with a Railgun or E-Sniper. Challenge yourself, make the most of the time you spend with this game. And remember, Rockstar has a feedback page, and let's just say I got plans. I'll catch y'all later. Have wonderful nights, wonderful days. If you have a dog or a cat, go kiss it on the forehead. Later.
Why is there